Oh, you know that moment when the universe decides it hasn't quite finished playing a cruel joke on you, so it ups the ante, adds a few more clowns, and then hands them all your life savings? Yeah, I recently discovered the universe is apparently on my husband's payroll, and it's been getting overtime for years. The air in our supposedly cozy suburban kitchen on a crisp Thursday evening felt less like home, and more like a poorly ventilated gas chamber, slowly filling with the noxious fumes of impending doom. I wasn't expecting a grand revelation, just a quiet night. Arthur, my husband of a decade, or as I now affectionately call him, Exhibit A, was humming off-key while scrolling through his phone, a habit I'd long since categorized under things I pretend not to notice but secretly document for future reference. I was making a valiant effort to resurrect a casserole from the culinary graveyard, a task that, in hindsight, was far less challenging than resurrecting my faith in humanity. Then, it happened. A notification popped up on his phone, a blaring siren in the quiet humdrum of our evening. Usually, I'm not one to snoop. My personal philosophy leans more towards what I don't know can't actively make me want to commit a felony. But this wasn't just any notification. It was a calendar alert, bold and unapologetic, screaming, "Dinner celebration for Serafina's promotion," with a little champagne flute emoji winking beside it. And the location? The Gilded Spoon, a notoriously upscale restaurant where our joint credit card usually went to die a slow, painful death. My first thought wasn't anger. It was a profound, almost spiritual sense of bewilderment. A dinner celebration? For her promotion? With him? My brain, usually a well-oiled machine of sarcastic comebacks and passive-aggressive observations, momentarily short-circuited. It was like watching a sitcom where the main character suddenly realizes they're not the hero, but the punchline. Apparently, I wasn't just invisible. I was also transparent, permeable, and possibly made of air, given how easily I'd been overlooked in this grand romantic gesture. I'm Eleanor Vance, by the way. Or, as I prefer to be known now, the woman who knew too much, but not enough to avoid becoming a meme. For years, I'd been the quiet anchor in Arthur's life, the one who remembered birthdays, paid the bills, and pretended his golf stories were fascinating. I was the beige wallpaper of his existence, functional but utterly forgettable. Arthur, bless his oblivious heart, was the kind of man who thought subtlety was a brand of expensive cheese. He was handsome in a generic, leading man from a B-movie kind of way, with a smile that could charm a snake, and apparently also a corporate ladder climber named Serafina Dubois. Serafina. Even her name sounded like a villain from a daytime soap opera, all dramatic and vaguely French. She was Arthur's colleague, a rising star in their marketing firm, and, as it turned out, a connoisseur of other people's husbands. She was the kind of woman who wore confidence like a designer scarf and had a laugh that could shatter glass, or at least my fragile sense of marital bliss. I'd met her once, at a company picnic, where she'd complimented my quaint homemade potato salad while eyeing Arthur like he was the last slice of prime rib. I should have known then. My intuition, however, was clearly on vacation in Fiji, sipping Mai Tais and ignoring all incoming calls. As Arthur continued to hum, blissfully unaware that his entire world was about to spontaneously combust, I felt a peculiar sensation. It wasn't the searing pain of betrayal. Not yet. It was more like the slow, dawning realization that I'd been cast in a particularly bad reality show, and I was the only one who hadn't gotten the memo. The absurdity of it all was almost comical. Here I was, meticulously planning our budget for next month, while he was planning a celebratory dinner for his mistress. It was a level of audacity that deserved an award, perhaps a gold medal in Olympic-level obliviousness. My gaze drifted from the calendar alert to Arthur's face. He looked so content, so utterly devoid of any moral compass that it was almost admirable. A small, dangerous smile touched my lips. "A celebration, huh?" I mused aloud, my voice surprisingly calm, like the eye of a hurricane about to unleash hell. Arthur jumped, startled, dropping his phone onto the counter with a clatter. "Eleanor, you startled me. What are you mumbling about?" "Oh, nothing, dear," I purred, picking up his phone and casually glancing at the screen again. just admiring your meticulous planning. Dinner celebration for Serafina's promotion. How thoughtful of you. I made sure to emphasize thoughtful with the kind of saccharine sweetness that could curdle milk. Arthur's face, usually a picture of bland contentment, went through a rapid series of color changes, from pale white to a rather alarming shade of puce. It was like watching a human chameleon having an existential crisis. Eleanor, it's just a work thing, he stammered, his eyes darting around the kitchen as if searching for an escape route, or perhaps a trapdoor to Narnia. A team dinner. To congratulate her? A team dinner at the Gilded Spoon, just the two of you. I raised an eyebrow, a silent challenge. Arthur, darling, even I know that's not how team dinners work, unless your team consists solely of you and your very special colleague. The sarcasm was so thick you could spread it on toast. He opened and closed his mouth like a fish out of water, clearly struggling to fabricate a believable lie. It was almost endearing, in a pathetic sort of way. And that's when the idea, brilliant and utterly unhinged, sparked in my mind. A tiny, mischievous imp of an idea, whispering sweet nothings of chaos into my ear. If Arthur wanted to celebrate Serafina's promotion, who was I to deny her a truly memorable evening? An evening that would be etched into her professional history like a very embarrassing tattoo. An evening that would make her wish she'd stayed in her cubicle, eating sad desk salads for the rest of her life. The thought brought a genuine, albeit slightly unhinged smile to my face. This wasn't just about revenge. This was about turning a tragedy into a performance art piece. And I, Eleanor Vance, was about to become the director of the most epic, cringe-worthy show of their lives. The realization that I'd been made a fool of hit me with the force of a runaway freight train, carrying a cargo of ironic laughter. And look, I thought my life was already a reality show, but apparently, I was just in the pilot episode. The main season was about to drop, and I was clearly the unsuspecting contestant about to get blindsided by a rogue banana peel. Arthur's attempts at damage control were, to put it mildly, pathetic. He tried to spin a tale about a secret client meeting that somehow morphed into a surprise celebration for Serafina. "It's just professional courtesy, Ellie. You know how important networking is," he pleaded, his voice cracking like a teenager's. I just stared at him, my expression a carefully curated blend of disbelief and morbid fascination. Professional courtesy? Arthur, the only thing you're being courteous with is my sanity. And even that's a stretch. This wasn't just about Serafina. Oh no, this was the grand finale of a decade-long symphony of being overlooked. It started subtly, like a slow leak in the ceiling. My mother-in-law, Brenda, a woman whose default setting was passive-aggressive judgment, always had a knack for it. "Eleanor, dear, your hair looks lived in," she'd say, her eyes darting to my sister-in-law, Deborah, who always looked like she'd just stepped out of a magazine, probably one about competitive gardening. Deborah always manages to look so put together, even after chasing the kids. It was never a direct insult, just a gentle reminder that I was the slightly crumpled, less shiny version of a daughter-in-law. Arthur, of course, never defended me. His philosophy was simple. If he ignored it, maybe it would go away. Or, more accurately, maybe I would go away. He was a master of the non-committal grunt, the vague nod, the art of blending into the background whenever family drama threatened to disturb his perfectly curated bubble of blissful ignorance. I was the designated emotional punching bag, the one who absorbed all the microaggressions and then, like a good little martyr, pretended they didn't sting. "Oh, it's fine," I'd tell myself. "They don't mean anything by it." Turns out, they did. And so did Arthur. Serafina, the corporate siren, had merely amplified the existing hum of disrespect. She wasn't just stealing my husband, she was stealing the last vestiges of my dignity, one champagne flute emoji at a time. I remembered a particularly excruciating company holiday party where she'd cornered me. "Oh, you're Arthur's wife," she'd chirped, her eyes scanning me like I was a particularly uninteresting piece of furniture. "He talks about you." "Sometimes. Mostly about how you handle all the domestic stuff so he can focus on his career." "You're so supportive." The way she said supportive made it sound like I was a particularly sturdy coat rack. And Arthur, standing right there, had just beamed, soaking up the praise for my efforts. It was like he'd won an award for delegating. "You know, Arthur," I said, my voice dripping with honeyed venom. "I always thought family was supposed to be a team sport, but apparently in our family, I was just the water boy, while you and Serafina were scoring all the touchdowns." He flinched. "Good. And speaking of teams, I guess Serafina is your new MVP, huh? Must be nice to have a colleague who appreciates your professional endeavors so much they warrant a private dinner at the Gilded Spoon." He tried to grab my hand, a desperate last-ditch effort at reconciliation. I pulled away as if he were radioactive. "Eleanor, please. It's not what you think." "Oh, it's exactly what I think, Arthur. And probably what everyone else thinks too, once they're done laughing." I paced the kitchen, my mind racing. "You know, for years, I've been the one holding things together. The one who remembered your mother's bizarre dietary restrictions. The one who made sure your shirts were ironed. The one who pretended your creative financial decisions weren't going to land us in a cardboard box. And what do I get? A front row seat to your midlife crisis, starring your office paramour." The humiliation was a bitter pill, but I was determined to chase it with a shot of pure, unadulterated schadenfreude. My internal monologue was already writing the script for the next act. I mean, seriously, the audacity. It's like he thought I was a houseplant. Just water me occasionally, give me some indirect sunlight, and I'll just sit here, quietly photosynthesizing while he lives his best life. "Ellie, don't be dramatic," he mumbled, running a hand through his thinning hair. "Dramatic?" I scoffed, a genuine laugh bubbling up, a dark, cynical sound that startled even myself. "Arthur, I'm not being dramatic. I'm being a realist. The only thing more dramatic than your infidelity is your complete lack of imagination in hiding it. A dinner for her promotion? That's like a villain leaving a signed confession at the crime scene. It's almost artistic in its stupidity." The thought of Serafina, smug and self-satisfied, celebrating her career triumph while oblivious to the storm brewing, filled me with a perverse sense of glee. She was the queen bee, the one who always got what she wanted. And Arthur, my dear, sweet, incredibly dense Arthur, was her loyal drone. Well, this drone was about to get swatted. "You know," I mused, tapping my chin, "I always thought the biggest clown in the family was my Uncle Jerry, with his questionable magic tricks at Thanksgiving. But you, Arthur, you've just taken the crown. A true performance artist, really. The way you've managed to juggle a wife, a mistress, and a completely straight face is truly a feat of modern engineering." He looked utterly defeated, which was a start. But defeat wasn't enough. I wanted public humiliation. I wanted a moment so exquisitely awkward, so profoundly uncomfortable, that it would become a legend in their corporate hallways. And I knew just the person to help me orchestrate it. Someone who held Serafina's career, and by extension, Arthur's future, in the palm of his hand. Someone who would appreciate a good show, especially one that exposed incompetence and deceit. Mr. Sterling Thorne, Serafina's boss. A man known for his impeccable suits, his razor-sharp intellect, and his absolute intolerance for anything that smacked of unprofessionalism. He was a man who valued discretion and integrity above all else. And I, Eleanor Vance, was about to introduce him to a very different side of his star employee. The thought of his reaction, his perfectly coiffed eyebrows rising in silent judgment, was almost as satisfying as the revenge itself. The game was on, and I was no longer playing by their rules. I was writing my own, with a very sharp, very cynical pen. My plan, once conceived, began to take on a life of its own, blossoming into a masterpiece of strategic chaos. It was so discreet, so elegantly devious, that even the CIA would take notes, probably between sips of lukewarm coffee and debates about the best brand of paperclips. Arthur, meanwhile, was still floundering in a sea of his own making, trying to convince me that Serafina's promotion dinner was actually a secret, highly classified company initiative to boost morale through gourmet dining. I just nodded, a serene smile plastered on my face, while mentally ticking off items on my revenge checklist. The first step was to get in touch with Mr. Sterling Thorne. This wasn't as simple as sending a LinkedIn request, though the thought did cross my mind. I needed a reason, an angle, something that would pique his interest without screaming, "Your star employee is sleeping with my husband, and I'm about to blow up her career like a cheap firework display." Luckily, Arthur, in his infinite wisdom, had left his work laptop open on the kitchen counter more times than I could count. And while I wasn't a hacker, I was excellent at remembering passwords and navigating company directories. A few clicks, a bit of digital sleuthing, and I had Mr. Thorne's direct office line. I decided to call him the next morning. My voice, usually a soft murmur, adopted a crisp, professional tone, like a freshly starched shirt. "Mr. Thorne," I began. "My name is Eleanor Vance. I'm Arthur Vance's wife. I apologize for the unsolicited call, but I believe I have some information that might be of professional interest regarding Serafina Dubois' recent promotion." I paused, letting the words hang in the air, a perfectly baited hook. There was a beat of silence on the other end, then a calm, measured voice. "Ms. Vance, this is an unusual call. What exactly is the nature of this professional interest?" His tone was cautious, but I detected a flicker of curiosity. He was intrigued. Excellent. "Well, Mr. Thorne," I continued, leaning into the phone, "I understand Serafina's promotion is being celebrated this Friday evening at the Gilded Spoon. Arthur, my husband, mentioned he was attending, and I thought it might be beneficial for you to be present as well. Perhaps to offer your personal congratulations, or simply to observe a rather unique team-building exercise." I made sure to infuse unique and team-building with enough sarcasm to curdle milk. He was silent for a moment longer. I could almost hear the gears turning in his impeccably organized mind. "Are you suggesting something untoward, Ms. Vance?" "Oh, untoward is such a strong word, Mr. Thorne," I replied, my voice light and airy. "Let's just say I believe there's a certain dynamic at play that might impact Serafina's professional standing, and perhaps even the company's reputation, if left unaddressed. And as a concerned party, both personally and, shall we say, indirectly professionally, I felt it was my civic duty to inform you." I was laying it on thick, but with just enough ambiguity to avoid outright accusation. I wanted him to connect the dots himself, preferably in a public setting. He cleared his throat. "And what exactly would you propose, Ms. Vance?" "I propose," I said, a wicked grin spreading across my face, "that you join me for dinner at the Gilded Spoon this Friday. Consider it a strategic alliance. We arrive together, perhaps a little late, and simply observe. No fuss, no drama from my end. Just a quiet, dignified presence that might encourage certain individuals to reevaluate their life choices." I added, "I assure you, Mr. Thorne, the entertainment value alone will be worth your time. And who knows, you might even get a good story out of it." He chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "A good story, you say? Very well, Ms. Vance. You've piqued my interest. Consider me intrigued. What time should I meet you?" And just like that, the trap was set. My heart was pounding, a drum solo of anticipation. I hung up the phone, feeling a rush of adrenaline. It was exhilarating, this dance on the edge of chaos. For years, I'd been the one underestimated, the quiet wife who baked cookies and ironed shirts. Now, I was a master strategist, a puppet master pulling strings with invisible threads. "They thought I was just a wallflower," I muttered to myself, "but walls have ears, and sometimes they also have a very well-stocked arsenal of passive-aggressive retribution." The rest of the week was a blur of preparations. I booked a table for two near Arthur and Serafina's reservation, ensuring a perfect vantage point. I picked out an outfit, not too flashy, not too demure, something that screamed, "I'm here, I'm fabulous, and yes, I know everything." I even got my hair done. If I was going to be the star of this tragicomedy, I might as well look the part. Arthur, meanwhile, was still in denial. He was acting overly solicitous, bringing me flowers, offering to do the dishes. It was almost sweet, in a completely nauseating way. "Are you feeling all right, Ellie?" he'd ask, his eyes full of a concern that was 90% guilt and 10% fear. Never better, darling, I'd reply, my smile unwavering. In fact, I'm feeling quite inspired. He'd just nod, clearly relieved that I wasn't screaming, but utterly clueless about the storm brewing just beneath my calm surface. The irony was delicious. He thought he was getting away with it, that I was just being dramatic and would eventually calm down. Oh, Arthur, you sweet, simple man. You have no idea. As Friday evening approached, I felt a calm resolve settle over me. There was no anger, no bitterness, just a quiet satisfaction. This wasn't about hurting them, not really. It was about exposing the truth, about reclaiming my narrative, and about serving a dish of poetic justice so cold it would give them frostbite. And the best part? They wouldn't even see it coming. They'd be too busy basking in their ill-gotten glow, completely oblivious to the fact that their celebratory champagne was about to be spiked with a healthy dose of reality. My inner monologue was already composing the reviews. A truly groundbreaking performance in the genre of husband gets what's coming to him. 5 stars, would recommend. The Gilded Spoon was everything its name implied. Opulent, a little stuffy, and filled with the hushed murmur of people pretending to be more important than they were. The kind of place where the breadsticks probably had a trust fund. Arthur had booked a prime table, clearly aiming for maximum visibility for his little celebration. Serafina, draped in something shimmery and expensive, was already there, her laughter echoing a little too loudly through the elegant dining room. Arthur, looking like a Cheshire cat who'd swallowed the canary and was now digesting it with a side of expensive wine, was holding court. My cue. Mr. Sterling Thorne arrived precisely on time, looking like he'd stepped out of the pages of a GQ magazine, his suit impeccable, his expression a carefully neutral mask. He nodded curtly at me, a silent acknowledgement of our shared conspiracy. "Ready for the show, Miss Vance?" he murmured, a hint of dry amusement in his voice. "As I'll ever be, Mr. Thorne," I replied, a mischievous glint in my eye. "Just try not to spill your popcorn." We walked in, not with a grand entrance, but with a quiet, deliberate presence. Every head in the room didn't turn, but the ones that mattered certainly did. Arthur, mid-sentence, his hand reaching for Serafina's, froze. His eyes, usually so bland, widened in a cartoonish display of horror. Serafina, who had been mid-giggle, choked on her champagne. It was magnificent. The silence that followed was so thick, you could cut it with a butter knife. And I was holding the steak knife. "Arthur, darling," I chirped, my voice sweet as poisoned honey. "Fancy meeting you here. And Serafina, congratulations on the promotion. We just had to come and celebrate with you." I gestured to Mr. Thorne, who offered a small, polite smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "And look who I brought. Mr. Sterling Thorne, Serafina's esteemed boss. He was just so thrilled to hear about your success, he insisted on joining us for a celebratory drink." Serafina's face, usually a picture of composed confidence, went through a rapid series of contortions. It was like watching a bad impressionist painting trying to capture the essence of pure, unadulterated panic. Her eyes darted from me to Arthur, then to Mr. Thorne, who was now observing her with an almost scientific interest. "Mr. Thorne, what a surprise," she stammered, her voice a reedy whisper. I didn't know you'd be here." "Indeed, Ms. Dubois," Mr. Thorne replied, his voice calm and resonant, cutting through the awkward silence like a finely sharpened blade. "Ms. Vance here informed me of your celebration. I thought it would be appropriate to extend my personal congratulations and perhaps discuss some future professional developments." The way he emphasized professional made it sound like he was talking about a demotion or a public flogging. Arthur, meanwhile, was a statue of abject terror. He finally managed to stammer, "Eleanor, what are you doing?" "What am I doing, Arthur?" I asked, feigning innocence. "Why, I'm celebrating, of course. Your little secret celebration, that is. Didn't you say it was a team dinner?" "Well, I just expanded the team. Consider it a proactive measure for corporate transparency." I smiled, a wide, beatific smile that probably looked utterly unhinged to anyone else. The waiter, bless his oblivious heart, chose that exact moment to approach. Table for two, ma'am? Oh, no, dear, I said, gesturing to Arthur and Seraphina's table. We'll be joining them. It's a party. I pulled out a chair, and Mr. Thorne, with a subtle nod, took the one next to me. The entire restaurant seemed to collectively hold its breath. Seraphina was visibly sweating. Arthur, maybe we should step outside? She whispered, clearly desperate to escape. Oh, no need, Seraphina, I interjected, my voice carrying just enough to be heard by the surrounding tables. Mr. Thorne and I are just getting comfortable. Besides, I'm sure he'd love to hear all about your promotion and how you achieved it. Perhaps some of the methods involved. I winked at Mr. Thorne, who maintained his professional poker face, but I could swear I saw a flicker of amusement in his eyes. The conversation that followed was a masterclass in situational comedy. Arthur tried to explain away my presence. Seraphina tried to act professional, and Mr. Thorne just sat there, a silent, imposing judge. I, on the other hand, was having the time of my life, interjecting with perfectly timed, barbed comments. So, Seraphina, I hear you're quite the closer at work. Must be true, given how you've managed to close in on my husband. Or, Arthur, you always said you worked best under pressure. I guess this is proof, huh? Pressure from all sides. The climax came when Mr. Thorne, after a few excruciating minutes of this charade, finally spoke. Ms. Dubois, he began, his voice devoid of emotion. I believe we need to have a serious discussion about professional conduct and the implications of certain extracurricular activities on one's career trajectory. My office, first thing Monday morning, and Mr. Vance, I believe your wife has highlighted some rather concerning ethical lapses. We will be reviewing your position as well. The color drained from Seraphina's face, leaving her looking like a ghost who'd just seen a very angry accountant. Arthur looked like he was about to spontaneously combust. Never imagined a few words from a boss could leave so many grown adults pale, and nobody was even into the arts. The justice, served cold and with a side of corporate reprimand, was exquisite. The entire restaurant was now buzzing, whispers turning into outright stares. My work here was done. I stood up, Mr. Thorne following suit. Well, Arthur, Seraphina, I said, my voice sweet and clear. It's been a truly enlightening evening. Do enjoy your celebration. And Seraphina, do let me know how those future professional developments pan out. I'm sure they'll be memorable. With a final, triumphant smile, I turned and walked out, Mr. Thorne by my side. The sound of shattered reputations and a very public meltdown was the sweetest music I'd ever heard. The aftermath was exactly as chaotic and satisfying as I'd hoped, like watching a poorly constructed Jenga tower finally collapse. Arthur, predictably, spent the next few days alternating between furious accusations and pathetic pleas. He called me a vindictive witch, a saboteur, and, my personal favorite, unnecessarily dramatic. I just laughed. Unnecessarily dramatic, Arthur? You're the one who thought celebrating your affair partner's promotion with a private dinner was a good idea. I merely provided the audience and the appropriate critical commentary. Seraphina, I heard through the grapevine, and a very chatty friend who worked in the same building, was indeed called into Mr. Thorne's office first thing Monday morning. The future professional developments involved a demotion, a significant pay cut, and a stern warning about her judgment. Her star, it seemed, had plummeted faster than a lead balloon in a hurricane. Arthur, too, faced the music. His ethical lapses led to a formal reprimand and a very public loss of face within the company. His career, once on a steady upward trajectory, was now stuck in an awkward holding pattern, like a budget airline flight. The divorce proceedings were surprisingly swift. Arthur, stripped of his bravado and his mistress, was a shell of his former self. He tried to negotiate, to save face, but I was relentless. I wasn't asking for much, just what was fair, and a little extra for my emotional distress, which I calculated to be roughly equivalent to the cost of a small island. He signed the papers, pale and defeated. Never imagined a signature on a piece of paper could leave so many men looking so utterly deflated. Life after Arthur and Seraphina was surprisingly quiet and peaceful. It was like finally getting rid of that irritating hum in the refrigerator you'd learned to live with, but secretly hated. I realized how much energy I'd spent being invisible, being the supportive background character in someone else's messy drama. Now the spotlight was on me, and for once, I wasn't just standing there, awkwardly holding the props. I reflected on it all, sipping my coffee on a quiet Sunday morning, no one else's schedule to consider. The new normal was less about dramatic confrontations and more about rediscovering myself. It was about realizing that being underestimated wasn't a weakness. It was a superpower. It allowed me to observe, to plan, to strike when they least expected it. And the humor, the cynicism, the acidic observations, they weren't just coping mechanisms. They were my armor, my shield against the absurdities of life. I wasn't a victim. I never was. I was just a woman who finally decided to stop being a doormat and start being a trip hazard. And honestly, it felt pretty good. The pain of betrayal had faded, replaced by a wry amusement at the sheer ridiculousness of it all. I learned that sometimes, the best way to deal with a broken heart is to turn it into a stand-up comedy routine. In the end, family isn't just about blood, or shared last names, or even who you share a bed with. It's about who doesn't laugh at your face but at the joke you've become. And sometimes it's about making sure the people who did laugh at your face end up being the punchline.